Parrots like this hyacinth macaw are wild animals, not pets.
Birds should not be pets. We are losing our birds. They know they're birds. These are wild birds rooted in biotic communities that are not ours.
They live for decades, possess the cognitive abilities of human toddlers, and operate on millions of years of evolutionary instinct. Because they have never been domesticated, their survival in the wild depends entirely on the collective protection of a flock. Their brains don't just prefer company, they require constant, complex interactions with dozens of their own kind just to maintain basic neurological health.
They are wild animals. They don't belong in cages, they don't belong in human homes, they don't belong in human lives, which are just all incompatible to the wild nature of these animals. And we believe the time has come to be honest about this and do something about this.
When we force an animal with this level of social and cognitive complexity into the isolation of a domestic living room, treating it as if it were just a domestic cat or dog, we strip away the very environment it needs to remain sane. This isn't just a failure of care, it is a formula guaranteed for systemic neglect.
8 parrots out of 10, which is a horrible number, it's actually a very big number, 8 parrots out of 10 get rehomed in the 3 years after they got adopted. That highlights a bigger issue, is that most of the people that actually end up getting parrots are not necessarily ready or got false expectations of what it would be to get a parrot.
For decades, the United States government ignored this reality. When Congress passed the Animal Welfare Act to establish baseline protections for animals in commercial trade, birds were excluded from this federal text entirely. Mammals received basic legal rights, parrots received nothing.
Without federal inspectors to enforce even the most primitive standards of care, breeders were free to rapidly scale their operations into industrial-sized mills. The retail pet market demanded cheap, readily available exotic birds, and unregulated commercial breeding facilities sprang up to meet the demand.
As you go through and around the world, there are deserts of parrots. People don't even remember how thick the birds used to be 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
Undercover investigations into these facilities have since revealed the true staggering scale of the industry. It is now common to find massive warehouses holding up to 3,000 large breed birds at a single time, functioning less like sanctuaries and more like high-density storage units.
Row after row after row. You walk into this bird mill, all the birds are just going insane.
Oh, there is a lot of sun conures on that road, but not all sun conures.
Stacked in identical wire cages, these birds often had barely enough room to stretch their wings. Confined in isolation, these intelligent flock animals experienced a profound psychological collapse. They developed cage-crazy behaviors, pacing repetitively, screaming endlessly, and routinely tearing out their own feathers and mutilating their own skin.
No enrichment for the birds. They got these little cages, not that there's any room to spread their wings and go anywhere, but if they could, they couldn't. They can walk a few steps and then turn around.
Inside these breeding mills, you won't find enrichment toys, varied perches, or any attempt to stimulate their complex minds. Instead, the breeding stock is reduced to a biological machine, typically providing nothing more than a wooden box to lay eggs in and a single dowel to stand on.
They have a perch and a wooden hutch to lay eggs, that's it.
The exotic pet trade successfully built a massive, highly efficient supply chain, but doing so required a grim trade-off, treating a complex biological organism like a factory widget. In this system, production and logistics are prioritized over the most basic requirements of avian life.
This bird was basically just used its entire life to produce more babies and then thrown away once it's past its prime. I was so upset for the bird. There are some breeders out there that are unethical, so we need to make sure that we're not supporting birds for profit.
Eventually, lawmakers attempted to correct this. In 1995, the German government established an international benchmark for parrot welfare, creating strict minimum requirements designed specifically to address the unique biology of captive exotic birds. This chart illustrates a core German mandate. The legal minimum volume of an enclosure scales mathematically with the physical dimensions of the specific parrot species. Under these standards, a macaw legally requires drastically more space than a parakeet, primarily because the law recognizes that parrots must be housed socially. The regulations also account for complexities of flock dynamics. For every additional pair of birds introduced to the enclosure, the required square footage must increase by exactly 50%. Furthermore, the German mandate effectively bans the standard low-cost seed diets common in the industry.
Seed diets in general, they will love it because it's like treats to them, but it's full of fat, it's very low in vitamins, especially vitamin A's, it's very low in different calciums and amino acids, which means that if you only feed this to them, they will become depleted in different nutrients that they need. And then I see a lot of different things happening. I see a lot of respiratory diseases, skin diseases, feather plucking, a lot of different diseases actually linked to the bad diet.
Facilities are legally obligated to provide specialized nutrition, mandating daily offerings of fresh nectar, sprouted seeds, and animal protein based on evolutionary needs of the species.
The United States took almost 3 decades to catch up. In March of 2023, the USDA finally enforced new Animal Welfare Act regulations, specifically extending federal oversight to captive birds for the first time.
These new federal rules require commercial breeders to draft formal, documented environmental enhancement plans to guarantee their birds' psychological well-being. They also mandate official oversights from attending veterinarians to ensure these standards are actually met.
On paper, both the German and American legal frameworks look rigorous. They are carefully drafted, idealized attempts to mandate the conditions of the wild using rigid, clinical language of a federal law. But a law is only as strong as its enforcement.
Recent undercover investigations by World Animal Protection and Seed into federally licensed breeding facilities reveal these conditions that directly contradict these newly minted standards. Instead of the spacious, socially enriched environments mandated by the regulations, investigators continually document birds isolated in cramped, rusted wired cages that restrict their movement and offer no psychological stimulation.
I eventually had to leave clinical veterinary medicine. I'm not the only veterinarian who has left practice because of working on birds. So many veterinarians came up to me with tears in their eyes. Moral stress of working and earning a living from animals they know should not be in captivity.
The mandatory veterinarian oversight role is equally hollow.
Official inspector reports document attending veterinarians who admit to never actually visiting the facilities or physically examining the avian species they are legally required to oversee.
This logic map shows how breeders legally bypass the physical exam requirement by exploiting a telemedicine provision in the Animal Welfare Act. A veterinarian can observe the flock via video call, never actually placing hands on the animals to properly assess the condition. Even when USDA inspectors do visit in person, a culture of leniency often prevails, knowing that issuing a citation could cost a breeder their federal license and destroy their business. This regulatory blind eye extends to the horrific extremes.
Undercover footage has captured federally licensed facilities where dead rats were left rotting at the bottom of a macaw's cage. Yet 0 citations were issued by the visiting inspector.
What I saw when I was there, I saw 2 dead rats in a macaw cage. Then you're the inspector and you show up and you're like, I gotta cite you. And you're like, whoa, if you cite me, I literally can't sell to stores, I lose my business.
Right. This occurs because the federal apparatus tasked with protecting animals is structurally designed to protect the financial viability of the breeders. As a result, hundreds of pages of welfare regulations are rendered powerless. The commercial mass production living creatures relies on efficiency and volume, 2 metrics structurally at odds with the slow, complex evolutionary biology of a parrot.
Even when a bird finally leaves a mill, a standard human home fails to meet its fundamental biological needs.
A domestic living room is filled with lethal hazards of a flighted animal, from spinning ceiling fans to toxic fumes of heated nonstick pans. Ultimately, it functions as just another type of hazardous cage.
Everything in our house can kill our birds. To what we cook with and fragrances that we want to use, what we clean with, everything. So they shouldn't be in our house. They shouldn't be in a cage. Our house is a cage.
As long as consumers continue the demand for exotic birds for their living rooms, the supply chain will find a way to deliver.
Whether it is a legally licensed facility exploiting loopholes, an illegal smuggling ring pulling birds directly from the jungle, consumer demands is the engine that drives this exploitation.
We are attempting to solve a fundamental biological problem with mere paperwork, and that represents an unsolvable paradox. The simple reality is this: you cannot mass produce the wild.
Our focus must shift away from the retail market and towards the staggering consequences of this industry.
Across the country, avian rescues and sanctuaries are severely overburdened.
We still have birds being bred and pumped into the system. We've got at least a 6-decade responsibility.
Housing thousands of birds that have either outlived their owners or prove far too complex for a domestic setting.
Baby boomers die, or they get elderly and have to move into a nursing home. That's going to trigger a shift. You can expect that happening in pockets and increasing, and it's starting to increase now. The bird is either going to shift to a rescue, or it's going to shift to a relative.
If we truly want to interact with these intelligent animals, the only ethical path forward is to adopt, foster, and rescue existing captive birds.
Rehoming is one of the most stressful events for them. When we have birds jumping, 2 homes, 3 homes, 5 homes, 6 homes, this is not unusual to see a bird with 7 to 8 homes. This is not unusual. We are killing them.
We must provide care for the existing victims of this trade rather than injecting new money into the systems that breed them. True animal welfare isn't going to come from writing stricter regulations for cages. It will only come when we recognize what these animals actually are and refuse to participate in the commercial exotic pet trade entirely.
It's hard to talk about this because we all love our birds so much, but the truth is we are all harming parrots in perpetuity unless we do something about this. I hope that anyone who's listening can start talking about the parrot crisis, because that's what it is. It's a crisis. It's urgent. If you care about parrots, the best things you can do are to never buy one, sell one, or breed one. Adopt, don't shop, because at the end of the day, we're not going to force every government around the world to come together in cooperation to save parrots. We have to come together as a community of people who love them and take action for ourselves.